If you're living and breathing, then you're vulnerable to this disease.
I was a cheerleader. My parents were in the ministry.
No, I can't stop. Yes, I want to.
And he took his last breath.
It's sold all over the city.
That is a disease, a powerful drug that has taken them over.
We could prevent this, and we're not.
The opioid crisis, words we hear a lot these days, but do we really understand them? Opioids are powerful painkillers like hydrocodone, Vicodin, and Oxycontin. When people get addicted and can't get them from their doctors anymore or afford them on the street, they often switch to heroin or fentanyl, and people are dying. The numbers aren't exact, but it's estimated upwards of 150 Americans are dying every day. And behind that astonishing number are people, and this is their everyday reality.
In 2005, he had a knee surgery and got a couple of pain prescriptions filled after that, and then couldn't get them anymore, so started to get them on the street, and then that went into snorting heroin. And I had it all set up in my head on how I was going to handle that phone call. Didn't play out that way, but I would play it out in my head trying to control some of that fear.
Tell me about that day that you did get the phone call.
I didn't get a phone call.
You didn't?
No. He came home the night before, happy to have seen friends, and had a long conversation with my husband and had a long conversation with me about his sobriety. And he went in his bedroom that he grew up, childhood bedroom, and he used alone behind a locked door. And he died. And my husband had to kick the door down the next morning when we realized he wasn't answering.
So I saw him, face down, kind of like on the couch, on his knees. And that happened yesterday. I just want you to know I understand, because that's yesterday. That's 5 minutes ago for me. I'll never get over it, ever. I'll be there on my knees. We're not like psychiatrists, psychologists, or anything. We're just parents that have been through hell. And it continues because you don't get better, as you said earlier. You kind of just, I think, keep walking through as best you can and choose every day to stay above water.
And I remember walking through the halls and I just kept repeating, he's dead, he's dead. I can't believe it, he's dead.
For months.
Months. I just couldn't wrap my head around it.
One day I'm going to open that door and go back in that bathroom and not fall on my knees.
I hear you.
But I am not there.
I can't even believe I still can't even believe I'm sitting here and I'm hearing the conversation and I'm hearing myself talking the conversation, and I still can't believe
I get it.
that it's about Hunter. Thank you for letting me be here. This
Glad
is the
you're
first
here.
time I've been around other people that have suffered this kind of loss.
We're glad you're here. We're here for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Do you think he'd be proud of what you're doing?
I do. I think he would be proud of me. At first it was a struggle. I thought, oh, I'm telling all his personal business. But I do think that he would be proud of me. I hope so.
Do you care if you die?
I care because I have so many people that love me. If it wasn't for them, no, I probably wouldn't. I'm shot in my feet, my fingers, anywhere you can get a vein, literally anywhere. These don't even really look that bad anymore because I haven't messed with them in so long because I blew out my veins. To me, it's just, I mean, it's euphoric. Like, nothing can bother me. Like, there's nothing you could say to upset me or, like, get under my skin because I just don't care. Like, when you're high, it's your world. Everybody else is just living in it. When you've been doing just regular heroin for so long, you build up a tolerance to it, and so you do fentanyl, but it is so dangerous because, I mean, just literally one speck of, like, almost like a grain of salt too much can be the difference between you feeling really good or just being dead as dead can be, you know?
Are you scared that that will happen to you?
No. You don't think about it, you know? Your mind's focused on one thing, and that's feeling good. It doesn't allow you to think about negative things like that, you know? And if you die, unfortunately, people get so depressed when they're in the cycle that most heroin addicts don't care if they die. They'd almost rather be dead because it is such a miserable existence.
Do you care if you die?
I care because I have so many people that love me. If it wasn't for them, no, I probably wouldn't. But I'm one of the fortunate few that still has a lot of people behind me.
How big of a problem is it?
Well, it's enormous. The really sad part is that it's avoidable. We could prevent this, and we're not. The reality is that it is a disease. We know that. We've looked inside the brains of people who have addiction. We've looked post-mortem. There have been large genetic studies. And so it's a combination of nature and nurture.
Do you say that you have a disease, that this is a disease?
Oh, I hate to use that word.
Really?
I do. I think it's a cop-out. Obviously, my brain there's something about addicts' brains that are wired differently. We definitely have a problem, but I don't, it's hard for me to say that my heroin addiction is comparable to, for instance, my friend's mom that just passed from cancer.
So when the mom out there is
EMTs,
watching this and saying, this can't be my son.
It absolutely could be. It could be the mom. I know mothers and daughters that go pick up their drugs together. I have picked up from Sugar Creek, South Boulevard, Arboretum, Ballantyne.
I think it's worth mentioning that even though the opiate crisis is an epidemic, alcohol still kills 2 or 3 times as many people as opiates every day. It's more than an opiate crisis, it's an addiction crisis. Neither of those, by the way, are getting better.
So why is the opioid crisis getting more attention?
As a society, we don't pay attention unless it's killing the people we pay attention to. And so when heroin addiction moved from an African American problem predominantly to killing young, white, suburban people, that's when the media began to pay more attention.
If the question is, have you ever wanted to stop? Yes. So I guess, yeah, like, to better answer your question is, no, I can't stop. Yes, I want to.
You do want to?
Yeah.
Do you think you ever will?
Absolutely, if I live long enough.
If people are dying from it, they're like, well, man, that means it's some good stuff.
Do you consider yourself lucky?
Yeah, I'm definitely one of the ones who made it.
Police, fire, or medic? Medic. My boyfriend's not breathing. I don't know. I think he took some drugs. Yes, I am.
Okay, how old is he?
21.
Alright, is he conscious?
No, he's not. He's gasping a little bit.
Okay, is he breathing?
No, I don't see him breathing. He'll gasp every now and then, though, and I think his lips are blue.
Okay.
It's called black tar heroin. Once this is 52 grams and sells for about $100 a gram.
Predominantly in Charlotte, are you seeing this or are you seeing the powder?
Up until a year or so ago, the majority is this, and this is still heavily prevalent in Charlotte. People don't like for us to say, well, you know, we were locking up users. They're uncomfortable with that. But you know, quite frankly, in a lot of ways, a lot of these users, the only way they'll ever get help is to get into a program. While we're arresting more people, the overdoses are going up, and people are dying from it. They're like, well, man, that means it's some good stuff. So I can use it, and I can be more professional with it, and it's not going to get me. It's sold all over the city. A lot of times they pick areas where there'll be low police presence. Quite frankly, they may pick a lot of areas where they feel it's safer.
Straight in Valentine.
Really?
I mean, yeah, in one of the nicest areas in Charlotte, and it's just like, that's where I know I got my stuff, that's where my dealer was, that's where he got his stuff, and it was like, it's all right there. And you know, that's something that we don't think of. We would think that it was, you know, in the poorer area of Charlotte, but it's right underneath our nose.
Is there a typical user or is it anyone?
The stigma of opiate addiction or heroin addiction used to be, you know, the homeless person under the bridge, but I can tell you nowadays that there's no particular individual. We have experienced everything from as young as you possibly can imagine, 10, 11, 12.
You've seen a 10, 11,
yes.
and 12-year-old. Do you consider yourself lucky?
Yeah, I'm definitely one of the ones who made it. And it's very sad to hear when people don't make it, you know, because it's a real thing. You know, this disease kills people.
All of our first responders here in Mecklenburg County can give Narcan intranasally. So the way this works is you'll actually go half in one nostril, and you just push it nice and slow. And then you'll go into the other nostril and go half up it.
So have you seen a steady rise in this?
I have seen a rise in it over the years, more specifically this year.
Is it hard to watch these people day after day who are hurting themselves?
It is. It does become very hard, especially when you see that they are so enthralled with the drug that has become their daily life.
I want the American people to know the federal government is aggressively fighting the opioid epidemic.
So while we were working on this project, we got word from the White House that President Donald Trump would be declaring the opioid epidemic a national public health crisis. The night that happened, I was at that support group you saw earlier, and I told them about it. Their first reaction was, well, can we go? We would love to be there. And unfortunately, it's not open to the public, so we decided to go in their place.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States and Mrs. Trump.
Addressing it will require all of our effort, and it will require us to confront the crisis in all of its very real complexity. Last year, we lost at least 64,000 Americans to overdoses. That's 175 lost American lives per day. That's 7 lost lives per hour in our country. 90% of the heroin in America comes from south of the border, where we will be building a wall. We can be the generation that ends the opioid epidemic.
There are a lot of counties in North Carolina that don't have a Suboxone provider, so we can reach all 100 counties within the state by using this telemedicine. We like to call it the underserved areas of North Carolina. Some people might even call it the forgotten areas.
An addicted patient feels marginalized, stigmatized by having substance abuse. And they may not always walk into an office and say, would you help me get off heroin? Would you help me get off opiates? So a lot of times that puts the patient in a predicament of who to ask help for. And a lot of times they would like to be anonymous.
You don't like the term substitute. It's not substituting one drug for another.
Right, I don't like it.
Tell me why.
Well, I think I like to use the word transition, because substitution implies that's all we're doing. We're doing nothing more than trading one drug for another. In essence, in a transition, the use or substitution of a drug is followed by structured treatment, follow-up visits, 12-step support.
You can hear it when they say, you know, my family is proud of me.
I got my life back.
I
hear that all the time.
I got a job.
Whenever I was going to get more dope, I would always say, okay, this is the last time.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for another day of waking us up clean and sober.
Yes. And I'm pretty sure, you know, in our addiction, you know, we had a lot of people, or I did, I'm speaking for me, I had a lot of people who just looked at Bridget, you know, in the natural. You know, drug addict, terrible mom, terrible wife, you know, terrible daughter, but they don't see what God sees in us.
Only you can heal my life, heal my life.
When they get here, they are broken, and it's a whole different lifestyle for these women. I mean, they're coming from a chaos, no structure, no authority. I remember being in that jail cell, hopeless, and just thinking that I was a junkie, and the sooner I died, the better off it was going to be for my family.
And you said that the judges knew you because you came in and out of their courtrooms so often,
Yes.
and now they still know you, but for a different reason.
Yeah, they knew me by name, and now they send people, girls here, for us to help them. It's just a miracle.
Whenever I was going to get more dope, I would always say, okay, this is the last time. Doing it every day, it was an everyday thing that I had to have whenever I woke up from the time that I went to sleep. I had to.
So how many times per day?
Probably about 10 times a day.
10 times a day.
Yes. And I started off with me snorting it and then going to a needle. But whenever my eyes were closed and, you know, they said I was purple and blue, and it's like I could hear somebody calling out my name.
I've used anything from pain pills to heroin, and I just got to the point to where I was just so miserable. I hated myself. I hated my life.
You came from a good family, a good home.
I did, absolutely.
So what drew you to it to begin with?
What got me started, honestly, was the wrong crowd in school. I started very young. By the time I was 12 years old, I was smoking pot.
Can you guys tell me, just one or two of you, where you were and what you were doing when you felt that call to obedience?
I was in county jail.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I knew, you know, it was the Lord telling me, you know, you need to be somewhere.
Women come in here, what is the first thing you try to get across to them that will get them from where they were and where you were to where you are now?
Basically that there is hope, that it's not easy. It's not going to be all rainbows and butterflies. It's a very hard, long, drawn out process, but so is the process that got us where we were.
Does somebody else want to start?
Oh,
okay.
Mine's Ephesians 5:8, and it's, "For you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Lord."
You can't describe this kind of pain. There's no words that are adequate. One thing that I have no regrets about, I told Hunter every time we talked, "I love you." I was sitting at the kitchen table writing Christmas cards. It was a Monday after Thanksgiving, and no worries. And my phone rang, and I saw it was Hunter. I got a big old smile on my face, and then when I answered the phone, it was his roommate. He said Hunter OD'd. And I just started screaming, and I literally collapsed to the floor, and I couldn't even wrap my head around what I was hearing. Even when the doctors are giving you bad news, you're clinging so hard to, he's gonna make it. But sadly, the miracle never happened for us, and Hunter passed away at 9:10 in the morning on December 4th, 2016. A good friend of my son's wrote a song right after Hunter passed away, and I made the decision to do a music video where hopefully we can make the biggest impact, reach the most people.
Was that a hard decision to make? Because I'm sure you had to make public a lot of private emotions.
You know, and that's a really good question, and I've been asked that since I started this process, and certainly my family questioned, was I strong enough to do this? But the answer is really, no, it wasn't hard, because I'm a mom. I don't want one more mom, you know, sitting by the hospital bed saying goodbye to their child.
You were just right there. Now you're gone, and it's a sad, sad song, but we're supposed to stay strong and move along.
And if we can save one person.
From living, having fun, to giving, to your go fund.
You know, I wish somebody had been talking about this, that Hunter could have heard this conversation that we're having now.
There's a good chance you know someone struggling with this disease. Maybe it's you. Don't let you or a loved one become one of the numbers. You just saw and heard from so many local organizations and facilities who are ready to help you fight this addiction. We have all their information posted on our website right now, or you can call the National Substance Abuse Hotline at 1-800-662-HELP.